Okay.
Laura. Thank you so much for joining us. You had a very um, what's the word for your NDE that you? How would you describe the NDE that you had? Because it's impacted on your life in so many ways. Um,
I I would say that it revealed reality to me in a way that I did not know was possible or um, true. You know that
we'll go with it. Unbelievable, an unbelievable NDE.
definitely unbelievable. If someone had told me the same story, or even something that was 50% less crazy, the person I was, I would not I would have said, that's ridiculous. This person's just trying to like sell books or whatever. I was that kind of like cynical, distrustful type of person. Very much in the left side of my brain, A plus B equals C. That's it. Math and science, like that's all that's important. Show me. And so I was shown.
Well, that sounds like quite a journey you've been on. So, if we could start at the beginning, what was your life like before the NDE?
Well, let's just say to start at the beginning, and the I didn't have the capability of knowing what was important and why. And I didn't know that certain things that happened in my life were gifts. So we'll just say things started with some childhood trauma that was rather severe. And that led me to be the type of person who needed to prove that I deserved the air that I breathed. I did not have a very good opinion of myself. In fact, I pretty much hated myself. And by the age of about 7 or 8, I was sure I was going to hell because, well, like of the things that happened in my life that I've blamed myself for. And I told no one about it. I didn't understand at the time that that energy, carrying that kind of energy, it creates and it attracts. And so I attracted things into my life that were difficult, obviously. But I managed to, get through school and mainly because I played basketball and that was my like saving grace. I always had a ball in my hands and I was always like escaping into a dream world of like being Larry Bird, the female version. And I I went to college on a basketball scholarship and hurt my back my freshman year. So I had my first back surgery then. I was also introduced to alcohol then, and I realized that when I drank, I could kind of let go of that restriction that I put on myself. Like the self confidence came in a bottle, and because of basketball, that kind of put some controls on my life, which was good. But it really did a number on my spine. Uh, Going forward, I got out of college and got a job, and at times in my 20s, at one point, I was on disability because my back had gotten unmanageable, and it was at that point that I learned that my MRI would look the same whether I was able to go run 5 miles, 3 times a week, or if I was in incredible pain on disability. So that kind of mystified me. And I got into reading the author John Sarno, who was a physiatrist at NYU. So that opened me up to the mind body connection. But at the same time, there was still the rest of my life and my personality going on. And I ended up, after basketball ended, that was like probably the second time in my life where I experienced like an identity crisis. And after after I died, I realized the first time I heard the definition of what a dark night of the soul is, I realized that my life was just one long running dark night of the soul. And every time I found an identity and excelled at it, it would get taken away. And so when basketball was done, I had to stop playing with a year of eligibility left, just because I was sitting in these like cold ice baths twice a day, just because I was in so much pain all the time. Uh, and I just realized, like, I'm not going to be playing professional basketball. Like, so I think I need to stop this. So I did. And that was at that point, my drinking took off again, because there was like nothing else except for me and myself. So I had no distractions. And I swore at that point I would never do anything competitive again, because I realized that my whole identity was basketball and it was what made me a good person. Well, a few years later, my sister got me to do a triathlon, and I got really into that. And within 2 years, was racing at like the elite level, and had coaching that was, top notch, and uh, all these goals that, you know, really had nothing to do with anything but ego. And when I was 33, I herniated a disc in a race, and I love to tell people that I still came in third, because because I got so out of shape afterwards that it's hard to believe. But at that point, I was in a lot of pain, and I swore I wouldn't have another surgery. But it got to the point where I was losing function in my right leg, and I was told that if I didn't have surgery, then I wouldn't get those muscles back. So I decided to have a small surgery, just like the one that I had when I was 18. The problem this time was that the disc reherniated about a month after the surgery, and it turned out that the surgeon was kind of too aggressive with the bone that he took out, and it left my spine unstable. So after about a year and a half of working with a really great PT, he kind of gently suggested that I go back to a surgeon. And I did. And I needed, just to make the story short, like 14 more surgeries to correct that second surgery that I had when I was 33. I did not go back to the same surgeon, obviously, but there were different things that happened. I got bone infections twice, and um, it was just, it was awful. I lived in chronic pain for 25 years, but the last 10, it was acutely chronic pain. And I feel like, where I'm talking so much about pain, I should mention that when I was in my 20s, I was diagnosed with PTSD, major depressive disorder, and borderline personality. And borderline, a lot of those symptoms mimic trauma. And so I definitely fit into that category. But what I chose to do was isolate myself. So I just had, the older I got, I think by the age of 28, I just decided that like dating just wasn't for me. And I kind of just closed myself off to everything but anything that would feed my ego. When I hurt my back, I was out of work, and the job that I had, I really enjoyed, and that kind of fed my ego as well when I got good at it. And after I had probably between like 10 and 12 surgeries while I was employed, with this employer, and they were really great. But in 2016, I had a surgery where I got the second bone infection, and I had 3 surgeries in a month, and uh, it it was awful. And I was out on disability for a full year, and at that point they said, you know we have to let you go. We don't know when you're coming back. You're welcome to apply when you're healthy again, but we have to fill the role. So that was devastating, because it was a company I thought I would retire from. And at that point, I was drinking, and obviously with all the surgeries, I was given opiates, and I became addicted to the opiates. And it was after the time, that point where I had lost the job, where I went to my doctor and I just said, I'm in a ton of pain, and I got a prescription for the first time that wasn't given to me after a surgery. So, like, up until that point, I would take the medication after surgeries and then come off of it. But at that point, I just stayed on it. And that was really like the beginning of the end. And I actually knew it, because I had been in AA for like a few years at that point, and had heard enough about what happens that I pretty much kind of knew exactly what I was doing. And I was in so much pain that I just didn't care. And in 2017, I had a surgery where they implanted a medical device called a spinal cord stimulator that blocks the signal of pain to the brain. And that ended up helping me so much that I was able to go back to work. And fast forward to 2020, I had just started a job where, or when COVID had started out. And I ended up being put on furlough about a month after I started this job. So that was like an excuse to sit home and just drink and use. There was just nothing going on. And the odd thing about it was COVID didn't really change my life at all. People talked about how awful it was and how isolating it was, but my life didn't change. It was that way all the time. And at one point, the spinal cord stimulator stopped working. And I went to the doctor a bunch of times. And finally, they said they would replace it, even though it was supposed to last for 10 years. And I was only about 2.5 years in. So this one day that they finally said, yeah, we'll put a new one in, I remember leaving there, and at the time I had a Jeep Wrangler, and it was the end of June, and I had the top off and the doors off, and I was driving around, and there was this certain song that was playing on the radio, and all of a sudden I didn't know what was happening to me, but at one point I had this feeling of, like, I feel amazing. Like, I don't know what this is, but I don't want it to end. And so I drove around in the car for hours, because I just didn't want to lose that feeling. And I came home that night and ended up, I had gotten a TV in my bedroom, which I had never had before. And for some reason, I ended up seeing this show called 60 Days In, which is about a prison that is overrun with crime. And it's actually a reality type of documentary almost, where the sheriff didn't know what else to do. So he decided to put people who were not criminals into the prison to be his eyes and ears. And no one in the prison knew. And I had seen later seasons of the show, that were kind of watered down and kind of more produced. And when I saw that the way the first season was filmed, I wanted to watch it because I had never seen the story behind it before. And I just thought, being in this like really kind of high mood, I thought, oh, well, this is going to be about like not judging the inmates and having compassion for people. And it ended up for me being about the participants. And I watched this show for 11 and a half hours straight. And it was the entire first season I watched. And at one point I realized like I needed to sleep because I was having trouble like operating the remote. And so I shut it off, and I started thinking when I was laying in bed about the different personalities of the participants, not the prisoners, but the people who went into the prison. They would pull them out and interview them, and they told the prisoners that they were filming a documentary about prisons, and so they pulled out prisoners too and interviewed them, so no one would know that anything was going on. And there was one person in particular who I zeroed in on right away, because this person seemed to be super sharp and picked up on everything. And she also, though, I saw myself in her. I didn't realize that her traits were very similar to me. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. Because I would see these interactions she'd have with prisoners, and you'd actually see what happened, and then you'd see her version. They'd pull her out and she would give her version, and I realized like, wow, she's torturing herself. Like that's what I always did. And it was like looking in the mirror. So when I shut the television off, it was like I was given this vision of a circle, and all of the human behavior that I had seen in this show was all part of me. And I didn't really know why I was having this understanding at the time, but at that point my thinking started to really like speed up. But it wasn't thought. Like normally when you're in thought, you're actually expending a little bit of effort. This was different. And at the time, I didn't know, I'd never heard the term downloading. I wasn't into anything spiritual. At that point, I think I had seen a medium once, and I had read a book written by a medium. And my idea of what happened when you died was that everyone could have different beliefs, but basically the same thing would happen, that your subconscious mind would be unlocked and you'd know all the answers. And that was kind of it. I didn't look into it any further than that. So I had no idea what downloading was. I didn't know what Kundalini was. But I started to have all this information come in, and I would think of a question, and all of a sudden my cell phone I'd get a text message. And at this point, like I wasn't talking to many people. I had accepted that my life was kind of ending. I had been diagnosed with liver issues about a year and a half before that, and I was so sick all the time that I knew that I didn't have long to be on the planet. And when you, even someone like me who had battled with suicidal thoughts my whole life, when death is imminent, you get this sick feeling, or I did, probably because I subconsciously I was terrified, but I was more terrified of life than I was of death, and so I was actually okay with it. Was like I was accepting that I was going to die, because I didn't think I could exist on this planet without large amounts of drugs and alcohol. And at that point, I would think of these questions. When answers kept coming, I started to get nervous. I was like, what is happening to me? And the thought came to me to call this medium that I had seen. And it came to me because the winter before I had been drinking heavily, and I would call her to make an appointment, knowing that she never answered the phone when you called. You would leave a message and she'd call you back and set up a time. Uh, so I had this thought, even after calling her a bunch of times over the winter, then she would call me back and I wouldn't answer, of course, because I would be like fairly sober in the morning and too afraid to talk with her. So I just was laying in bed and I thought, if something is happening to me right now, I think she's going to answer the phone. And so I called and the phone rang a couple times and then it just stopped. It was silent. There was no message or anything. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe nothing's happening. As I was actually almost relieved. But then I thought, oh, well, my cell phone doesn't work very well here. Maybe I should try again. So I tried again, and lo and behold, she picked up the phone, and we ended up having a conversation. Like, this woman is a saint. Uh, because she said initially she wouldn't have time to talk to me for a few weeks, and she said, but you said you've seen me before, and I said, yeah. And she said, well, your voice sounds familiar. And even the cynical part of me was like, yeah, I doubt that, but okay. And then she started describing my Nana. And she said something about my mother that was accurate. And I thought, whoa, okay, she's really tapping into my energy. And we had a conversation about what was happening with me. You know, I told her I was an alcoholic and I was like, but I'm sober right now. And she was like, well, honey, you don't need me. You need a psychiatrist. and and I was like, yeah, I know, I have one. but what is happening to me right now? I know you're not going to tell me, either because it's not morally okay or because you just can't access the information, but like something is happening and I don't know what it is. And all she said was that what was happening to me usually happens to people much later in life. And that gave me a feeling that, like, okay, I'm not going to ask any more questions now. So I got off the phone with her and I started thinking about how I had never gone to a long-term rehab. I had never done a rehab for opiates. I had just gone for like 2 or 3 days when drinking had gotten really, really bad and I was really sick. But I never really committed to anything. So I thought to myself, like, I need to go somewhere. So in order to do that, I have 3 cats, and probably the only person I would have allowed in my house at that time, because it was a mess, was my cat sitter. And so I called her and I told her what was happening. And she is someone that I had known from AA for many years. And she would always say, like, well, I know AA works, but I don't feel like I have a connection with God. I don't have this faith that other people have. And so it was funny that I called her when this is happening, and she was like, Laura, are you writing this down? And I just said it. I was like, no, I can't even think right now. I think if I'm meant to remember, then I will. And she said, you know, well, of course I'll help you in any way that I can. So I got off the phone with her. And at that point, I knew I had to make another phone call. And at that time, it took me a couple years to understand why I had to make these calls. But I had to call my friend who I met when I adopted my 2 handicapped kittens. Uh, and she fosters kittens in her house and is involved in the shelter. And I was given a vision of a litter of like tiny, tiny kittens. And God said that, tell Joyce, thank you for taking care of my most precious creatures. And I knew I had to tell her like that, and that I hadn't been sober in a long time. And so when I called her, and I was sitting in the room I'm sitting in now. And when if you could look out the window, you would see that I look out to about 20 miles of ocean. And when I got on the phone with her, I was looking out the window, I noticed this massive cloud that was sitting. Like, what was strange about it was that I could see the sun all around it, like about a quarter of a mile to the west, and a little bit less to the east, and I could see the sun on the other side of it to the north. And thunderstorms would come in from that direction, but usually you wouldn't see the sun until the thunderstorm was over. So it was strange. I mean, there was no thunderstorms predicted for that day. Anyway, it was so strange that I took a picture of it, and I started to talk with her, and I said to her that I hadn't been sober in a long time. And when I said that, a lightning bolt came down from the cloud. And I was like, I was surprised, but I didn't think it had anything to do with me. I kind of laughed because I was explaining to Joyce that something crazy was happening to me. And I thought that was pretty funny. But when I got to the part about the kittens, which was much harder to tell her than not being sober, because you know I really kind of thought like she's going to think I'm nuts, but I had to tell her. And when I said it to her, another lightning bolt came down from the cloud, and at that point, like, I was kind of frozen in my tracks, because literally came down, with my words. And there was never any thunder, and it didn't rain, there wasn't any wind. There was just two lightning bolts when I told her the two things that I needed to tell her. And I have pictures, like I have the picture of the cloud, and it's actually more dramatic, like in the picture, than I even remember it. I took a picture when the phone call was over 20 minutes later, and it was bright and sunny out. And so it was just unbelievable. I went to bed that night. Like, the rest of the day, I don't have much recollection of, but I went to bed that night, and I was laying there, and I started to feel this feeling that I had never felt before. And it, the best way I could describe it was, it felt like this inner whirling. And I had done so much for so many years to block feelings from my body, because I lived in so much pain, that this kind of feeling it was terrifying. And all of a sudden I knew that I wasn't going to get to say goodbye to anyone. I didn't know what was happening to me, but I knew that it was like pretty much over. And in that, at that time, one of my kittens or cats came up, and I had a miraculous medal on. And the reason I wore the miraculous medal was, when I had seen that medium back years and years and years and years before that, the last thing she said to me was, she described this necklace that I didn't have on. And she said, your Nana is saying to always have it with you. And I didn't want to wear it at that point, because it was this thin little medal that was pinned on my mother the day she was born, and I was afraid of losing it. So I ended up just getting a different miraculous medal, and wearing it. Like, I wasn't Catholic, but what that medium said really stuck with me. So, but when the cat came up and started biting it, all of a sudden I knew my Nana was there with me. And I was never really into meditation before that, but I had this friend from AA who introduced me to it. And she would always say, like, to repeat a word. And if you couldn't pick a word, just pick her word. And her word was love. And so I decided to meditate. I have no idea where that came from. I understand it now, but I did not then. So when I breathed in, I said the word love. And when I breathed out, I said the word Nana. And like the feeling of fear was so great that meditation was the only thing that I could think of doing. Like when I talk about this, I always feel the need to say, I got in this car accident in the early 2000s where I lost control of my car, completely sober, and ended up rolling over on the highway and like sliding across the highway on the side of the car and flipping up and landing in the median. And that wasn't as frightening as as this as this was. It wasn't even close. And because I knew this was the end. Uh, but within 4 cycles of about four of breathing, I was out of my body. And I went from sheer terror to, like, there's no words. The ecstasy doesn't describe it well enough. At first, I said that it felt like being bathed in love, that love surrounded me, love went through me. And one day I realized, this was after, it wasn't surrounding me, it wasn't going through me, it was me. That's what we are. We don't have words. A Course in Miracles says that nothing, we have no experience of the love of God, that nothing we remember resembles it in even the slightest way. And that is true. So when I saw my Nana, I like embraced her, and I felt the grief that I had carried in losing her. It fell off me like bricks, and I could feel my body crying. But what was strange about it was that I wasn't in my body. Obviously, I was still attached to it. And the first thing I heard was, "Your suffering is over. You've learned the lessons you needed to learn. Going forward, you will experience pain differently." And this voice that was speaking to me, I knew I was totally comfortable with. Um, and I didn't realize, like, what shocked me was how loved I was, that I had entered into this, like, celebration. I was surrounded by souls who were telling me how lucky I was that I got borderline, because the people who get that experience so much pain that you know, they learn so much more than people who don't have things like that. And I was like, you're crazy. Like, I didn't want that. Um, it's hard, I think, for a lot of people who have had near death experiences. It's hard to translate them into like a linear timeline, because so much happens in an instant. And I experienced gnosis, but I didn't know that until I started asking questions. My biggest question was, like, well, why me? Why would I be chosen for this? Like, I wasted my life. And it was explained to me that everything that had happened in my life, like every choice that I made, was all part of the plan. That the first half of my life had to be as difficult as it was, with the range of different painful experiences that I had. It was so that I could have empathy for a wide range of people during the second half of my life. There were there were a lot of things that I got a small taste of um, growing up, like difficult things. Uh, and so that kind of explained that, explained it to me. They said that a lot of people would know my story. And the reason they said that was they wanted me to know that the decisions I made, that none of the details would matter. And I know I needed to know that to be able to speak about my experience, because before this happened, I needed validation for everything. If you told me I was blinking the wrong way, I would believe you, and I would ask you, well, how do I do it right? Like there was nothing that I was sure of myself on. Um, and so this experience was perfectly designed because there was no way that anyone was going to be able to validate for me uh, what happened. No one would believe it in my mind, and I even said that on the other side. I was like, no one is ever going to believe this, uh, because again, so many things happen all at once. Uh, I was asked if I wanted to come back. And my answer was, hell no, there is nothing of that world that interests me in any way. And at that point, I was shown my parents, and I could see their silver cords, and they were uh, very much, they're alive and well and healthy. And I realized I could not leave without explaining to them, like, all of the things that I now understood. Um, and it's funny because we had this really difficult relationship up until that point. And on the other side, it didn't matter. All I had was the most tremendous, tremendous love for them. Everything I realized that, wow, they were the two perfect people to teach my soul what it came here to learn. No one could have done it better than them. That every decision they ever made with my best interest in mind was perfect. Um, and so I wanted to come back to have the chance to really celebrate them. And, I was also shown what would be possible if I chose to come back. And everything is paradoxical in this life. So what's funny about it is that I knew none of it was real. That it wouldn't matter if I came back and I was Mother Teresa, or I was, like a mass murderer. It's not real. We play roles, and we play every role. I can verbalize this much, much better now than I could have when I first came back. One of the things that my Nana said to me on the other side was that I would remember in bits and pieces as I went along, and that really has happened. But there were a couple other things that I was shown that really were um, instrumental in me wanting to come back. And one was that I was shown this being who could go back and forth between heaven and earth. And I thought to myself, like, okay, well, that's an angel. Why are you showing me this? And why in the world would anyone leave heaven to go to earth? Like, if they had the choice, like, why? And I was shown that this being left because they were just as happy on earth as they were in heaven. And on earth, I was shown this scene of this being, I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, this being in a car with no roof, driving through this wide open desert type area that looked like maybe Arizona or Utah. And I could see the music floating behind the car. And I felt this person's joy. I had never felt like, even in heaven, being in pure ecstasy. This feeling was new to me, that this being was feeling, and I didn't understand at the time that I was being shown my idea of heaven on earth and my idea of freedom. So I mentioned that because the last thing that I was told, I didn't want to leave when it was time to go. And my Nana said, well, you can come back whenever you want. And I knew that meant through meditation. I knew she didn't mean that I could come back like for good, but that, and I ended up obviously coming back. The next day was it was a different, it really was like being reborn into a world that it was the same, but I felt completely different. I felt like I was in this bubble, and it was just me and God, and everything was just so wonderful. Like at one point, I went into this convenience store, and the guy behind the counter was, just working. And I stepped up, and I was feeling so much love for him. And I thought to myself, like, wouldn't it be funny if he just started to laugh, because like we both know that this is kind of like a joke, and if he broke character, how funny that would be, like. And then I realized, no, he probably would think I was nuts. So, um, but like different things like that happening, overwhelming love for complete strangers. Um, and I started to notice that it felt like everything was set up perfectly for me. Like that next day, I had been invited to go down to my parents' boat, and I hadn't been on their boat in years. So it was rather ironic that I was going down there that day. My sister had a boat in the same area, and I had never been on it. I thought I would never be invited. And I ended up getting invited to go see their boat that day too. And we pull up on the dinghy, and I see the name of the boat, and it was Eventually. And I thought, wow, like it was just crazy. At one point, I was looking out at this beautiful landscape of ocean and trees and uh, boats, and I heard clairaudiently, "This is for you. This is all for you." And I thought, how can that be? Like, it can't all be for me, And I didn't get it. Um, but the rest of the day went on, and there was one thing that happened that I'll share, because it has to do with being on the other side. I had asked my Nana before I left. I said, will you please, please give me something that I can say to my mother, so that she'll know that I saw you, that I was with you. And I don't remember her responding to that, but I did ask her over and over. And when my father came to pick me up, they were on a mooring, and we were on the dinghy again. We pull up to the back of my parents' boat, and my mother had a miraculous medal too. And she, as we pulled up, she had it in her hand, and she said, "Laura, this chain that you got me for my miraculous medal is kinked. Do you think I should still wear it?" And I realized, like, oh, thanks, Nana. The sign's just for me, like it. And that was the beginning of understanding I was not going to be able to explain this to my parents for a long time. And I tried to tell them at different points, and it wasn't their favorite topic of conversation. I will say that. But as the weeks went on, or actually only a couple days happened before I had thoughts of fear, because when I came back into my body, all the pain was gone the first day. And I had been addicted to Dilaudid, and I hadn't taken it. In fact, when I was doing all that downloading, before I transitioned, I went through my house, and I had this drug stockpiled, in different places, and I threw it all away. I wanted to get rid of it while I still felt the way I was feeling, because I knew that that feeling could end. So I didn't understand why I wasn't going through withdrawal. But I thought it was because I was doing what God wanted me to do. I thought I was making the choices that God wanted me to make. And as long as I would do that, then I would never have pain and I would always be happy. Well, when the thought came in, what will I do if I don't know what God wants me to do? Like, that was the first fearful thought I had. And it was like a cascade happened. And all the pain came back. And that started, like, the work, I guess. Like, when I was on the other side at one point, I knew what I was in for. I was very excited, but I remember repeating, my human condition, my human condition. This will be so hard in my human condition. And those words were chosen like perfectly, because it was my human conditioning that was the problem. I didn't know that. So the idea of reading A Course in Miracles very quickly started coming into my mind. I didn't stay clairaudient. I heard a few things in those maybe first 2 days, but then my vibration, I think, came down too much, and I couldn't support my thinking, and my brain could not support that vibration very long. So the thought of reading the course came in, and I had it a bunch of times. I had bought the book years before that, and I happened upon it almost by mistake. I was reading a review for a different book, and started to get curious about what the course was. So I bought it, I started reading it, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And I like, right away, I put this post up on Facebook with a quote from it that was, healing rests on charity, and charity is a way of perceiving the perfection of another, even when you cannot perceive it in yourself. And anyway, it wasn't the right time, and I got bored, so I put it down. But I ended up at one point looking for the Bible that I had kept since I was like in first grade. And I kept it in this drawer that I never opened. It was covered in dust. And this one day when I went to look something up, the Bible was nowhere to be found, and A Course in Miracles was in its place. And I didn't leave it there. And I had no idea where the Bible was. Like, how could that have moved? And when I saw it, it was like, it felt like it literally like smacked me in the face. So I took it out, and I put it on my coffee table, where I promptly stared at it for about 6 weeks. And when I finally opened the cover, I read the introduction, and just, it's one paragraph, and I had to reread it like 4 or 5 times. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be my manual. Because right away the learning started with me when I came back, and I understood that it was my thinking that was causing all my pain. On the other side, I was like, I was washed clean of all the resentment that I carried, and all the past hurts. But I knew that if I didn't find a new way of thinking, that I would just go back to being the same judgmental person that I was. I didn't understand that there is only judgment of self, that everything we see is a projection of our minds. So if I'm looking out at someone else and having a judgment about them, it's not about them at all. It's about me. It was about how harshly I judged myself and how unforgiving I was to myself. And I knew that had to change. So I started reading the course, and about 6 months after this experience, an old surgical bone infection reactivated, and I ended up getting really sick. And I was reading this part of the course that talks about how all dis-ease is of the mind, and we experience it because we create it and we believe in it and we give energy to it. And I wanted to take the book and throw it against the wall. Like, I had been in the hospital for like 3 weeks. I had my 16th back surgery to get all the hardware out of my spine. And I had all this new nerve pain that the spinal cord stimulator didn't touch because it was in new places. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, why would I do this to myself? I had to take 4 months off of work. And the week before I was supposed to go back to work, I was in a ton of pain. And I thought to myself, like, I don't know how I'm going to go back like this. And I ended up watching the documentary Heal on Amazon. And towards the end of it, they show this woman who has MS and some other autoimmune disorders. And I had a list of autoimmune diseases, so that got my attention. She's working with this person who called himself like a divine conduit. And as he's working on her, she started to cry, and she said, well, I don't know who I am without being sick. And I realized, like, I started to cry. I realized that pain had become my entire identity. It had infiltrated my life to such a degree that it controlled everything. And it literally became me. So it was like being addicted to that. We fear change so much that I couldn't even let go of pain. And the very next day after having that understanding, I woke up and all the pain was gone. And I'll never forget it. It was March 7th, 2021. I was like, it was like something out of a movie, like I was dancing like in my house, moving around, like without this osteoarthritis that I had had since I was 18. Like, how is that possible? Um, and that was that was really like the beginning of understanding that I wasn't reading A Course in Miracles. I was living it. And it happened when I came up to the 1 year anniversary of the NDE. I opened up Facebook, and my memories popped up, and there was that post. I had posted it 5 years to the day before I died. And seeing it that day on the 1 year anniversary, it was like, whoa, wow. Like, I knew that I was meant to read the course, but because of the way that I died, there was no one there to corroborate, anything. And I was so left brained that, like, well, if your heart doesn't stop, then you're not dead, and it didn't really happen. You probably had a dream. It's like that's where I started. Um, Now I understand that, like, the physical body is not who we are. It's irrelevant. Actually, you don't need to die to cross over. Like, your physical body, like, we never die. So since that time, I've just been on this incredible journey of healing and of learning. Miraculous things happen. Like, I'm at the point now where, uh, like, this is a perfect example. This happened the other day. I think a lot of people are seeing like angel numbers everywhere. And so I'll see them on license plates. And I happen to be dictating a message to a friend of mine about these numbers, saying, "Oh yeah, I saw 444, and then 2 cars later, the license plate said bird. I don't know what that means." And I was sitting at a red light while I was dictating this, and I was the first person, waiting, and I'm in this busy intersection for like a 3-lane road in the middle of Boston. And as I'm dictating it, saying, talking about bird being on a license plate, a wild turkey walked across the road in front of me. Like, how does that happen? And it's like stuff like that happens all the time. You know, I I had to understand that if I wanted to live a joyful life, if I wanted to feel joy and be happy, I have to choose that. I have to be joy to feel joy. That in every moment we get the choice. But we're so conditioned to go down these pathways that are negative. Like, I took an antidepressant for 20 years, and every time I would come off of it, I hated taking it. So every few years or every few months, I would be like, yeah, I'm not going to take this anymore. Between a week and 2 weeks, I would have these random suicidal thoughts that would come into my mind. And so I thought, like, geez, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get off of this. But all it was I was listening to programming that was just so negative, and it was speaking to me all the time. When I learned how to silence that voice, life became so much easier. I learned how to open my heart. I learned what that meant. And in doing that, I could then allow my brain to be a tool of my heart. Like, because everything is paradoxical, we celebrate human intelligence, but the highest human intelligence is like nursery school finger painting compared to infinite intelligence. And we all have access to infinite intelligence. It's our human intelligence that limits our access to infinite intelligence, because if we are taught and we believe that our brain will be our tool to solve all our problems, then it's like our thinking that really limits us. When you can put the brain aside, we all have this internal compass that will never lead us in the wrong way. And the beauty of living with an open heart is there's no such thing like as heartbreak. The heart is always in joy. It's always in the now moment. So if I'm connected with, and my awareness is in my heart, it doesn't matter what's happening outside of me. Like, eventually my reality changes to match my vibration. So when I can be joy, the world is joyful. Like, we don't understand that choosing to put our attention on something negative, it changes our experience. And the most valuable thing that we have is our focus. What we focus on, we'll get more of. So I've learned how to stop being forced into painful learning, because I don't watch like the little signs that the universe gives me. I've learned how to learn joyfully. Um, there's two things that I kind of took from A Course in Miracles, and one is that the universe is always working for my greatest good. The second one is that I can't understand anything. I experience it in the moment I'm experiencing it. Um, and if I put those two things together, no matter what I'm experiencing, I know it's for my greatest good, even if I don't like it. So there's never any reason to get upset. And it's being upset that attracts more upset, you know? So it's been 5 years now, almost. In another month and a half it will be 5 years. And I could never have in my wildest dreams thought or imagined what has happened in my life. And all that's really happening is I'm understanding that I don't know anything. Like there's always so much more. Like I'm learning how little I know, if that makes sense. That's probably most of it, the story.
There's so much that you've like joined the dots on that is incredible. And it just reminds me of a story. I don't know if you've heard of Sid Banks. He
No.
had a he had like one of these downloads. There was a time in his life that, I mean, he was just a blue collar worker. He wasn't reading books and, he wasn't a philosopher in any way, shape. And he had these downloads and his entire life just changed. Like from that day, he had to change his work, change his friends, leave home. He actually went to some guru conference and he came back and he said, the gurus don't know what they're talking about. A lot of them are making it up.
That's awesome.
But
But see
it's just,
that
his
that's
name,
what
yeah, he's not around anymore, but he's called Sid Banks and he wrote a book. It's called The Three Ps, Three Principles. It starts with a P, but I can't remember what they are, but a very interesting man. But yeah, it sounds a lot like that. Like I think when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? If
yes.
you just let go and get out of your own way, which is what you did, you kind of just surrendered and said, "Well, this is it," and allow to whatever happened to happen, and be willing to go there and explore. I mean, even hearing your nana speak, somebody might say, "Oh, I'm making it up," and push it aside, and you said, "No, I'm not. I'm listening. Where is this taking me?" Yeah, and I find that that's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I've got a few questions. Been
Sure,
writing
sure.
them down as we've been going along.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah, what do you think triggered it actually? Do you think it was surrender or it was just acceptance? What do you think started that? Because something triggered it. There must have been a moment. What was that moment for you?
Well, I think that it was timed. Um, like the way this life works, it's mind-boggling, the details that all come together just perfectly. Like we can't, the human mind, even if it was like completely unlocked, what do we use? We use 3 or 4% of our brain. Even if the brain was completely unlocked and we used 100% of it, it's still a limitation device, like, so I don't know if there was anything that triggered it. Everything all came together perfectly. Like I had that. Actually, what it was a song, and the song was called "Too Late" by a group called Washed Out, and there was the reason that I noticed it when I was driving to the appointment was Washed Out had a song that would always hit me when I would listen to it when I ran. And it always seemed when that song played, like I was floating um, on air when I was running. And so there was a connection there. Um, and maybe it was the song that started everything. Like I've been given different soundtracks, really. Like, you know, our guides and angels will speak to us through music. And at times, like the day that the pain left me, uh, I went out in the car and I had about an hour's drive, and it was March 7th, 2021, which was a Sunday morning, um, and this music that was given to me, well, that's how I put it, like, but I couldn't tell if the songs that were coming on were directing my thinking, or if it was that they were meant to match like my consciousness in that moment. But when I got where I was going, I had this realization. It was kind of like it was a revelation. It felt like Jesus had held me by the hand, and we walked into heaven. And I, like, mentally speaking, like, and I realized, like, oh my God, this is just the beginning. Like he's just meant to bring me to the start, you know? And what was interesting about that was the next day my mother sent me this email, and as I opened it, I got a high pitched like sound in one of my ears. It was my left ear, but you know, a download. And it was that the the pastor from my church who I grew up with, he died um that, like, the same day that I had this understanding. And I thought to myself, well, how could that be related? And it's like everything is related. Everything is for you. Your entire, like, each of us is God. Each of us, like, a part of God having an experience of itself. So everything that I see is me. You know, like I didn't understand that then, and it's really kind of hard to understand that even now, that each of us is having this unique experience, that, like, the vastness, the size of it is beyond like comprehension, you know. But at different times I've been given books that I didn't I didn't choose. It's like they, at one point, a book appeared on my Kindle that I didn't download, you know, and of course it was a book that was channeled. I can't remember if it was Jesus that was being channeled, or if it was, might have been, it was someone else, but it was like all these books that I was reading, they were all channeled works. And I ended up connecting with someone who is an open channel herself, and she shared her gift like freely with me. And so I've had the benefit of guidance from, you know, high levels, which has definitely, like, it skyrocketed my understanding of A Course in Miracles. Like, she at one point was saying, like, she was channeling, but she was saying I was channeling the consciousness of the course through her, and that the course wanted to work with me. Like, and I've gotten different, like, different suggestions. You know, one was that I read the Seth material, um, and or the all the books, not just that one, but Jane Roberts' books. And at one point, I had a dream, and Paramahansa Yogananda was in it. Like, I didn't, you know, I didn't study him. I actually had kind of an aversion to to Autobiography of a Yogi, and I didn't know why. I didn't really want to read it, but I woke up that day and I knew I had to read it. And I understood then when I started reading it that, oh, like this was meant to show me that like what A Course in Miracles is teaching is actually real, and people have been living it for a long time, you know. But getting back to your question about how things started, I think it was that I had given up. That we look at everything backwards because we judge things so harshly. And my giving up would be the human way of putting it, but the spiritual way would be that I was surrendering to God. Um, I didn't know that, but I fought so hard, like I was brought up to be stoic, like to not complain, um and I wanted to be the best at whatever I did, so I could put up with a lot. And I just couldn't. There was so many surgeries, so many like massive ones where um my body was like terribly altered. And when you have like 10 inches of um, spinal muscle like stripped to the bone over and over and over again, it's exhausting, And so I just felt like I couldn't exist in this reality anymore. I wasn't suicidal at all. I was just exhausted. And it's funny because I understand things so differently now. Like I don't read the Bible, but different verses have come to me. And one of the first that came was Jesus saying, the first will be last and the last will be first. Because I would go into AA and listen to people talk about like their embarrassment and their shame and all of this. And it's like, you know what? You don't get this gift until you're ready for it. But to look at addiction as a gift is the other side of the coin. It's not the way human beings look at it. Like it's not a coincidence that I was given that borderline is like it. Not so much. It's not as bad now, but it very much used to be a socially like reviled mental illness. The first person I ever went to see when I was in my 20s, I had a friend who really kind of encouraged me to go to a therapist. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go to a psychiatrist because that's like probably the best way to start. And anyway, this person said, oh, I can't see you. You need inpatient help. And I was like, I just graduated from college. I was working full time. Like, I'm not going inpatient, like that's insane. But it was just because I was being honest. Um, but like I didn't get those things by mistake, I got those things, because I forgot this part. Um, my biggest question was why me? Like why would I get picked for such a thing? And because I was in gnosis, when I was given the answer, what was said was, this happens for everyone, it's just your time. But what I understood was that everyone, when they're in their soul's last lifetime, gets the information that I was getting. It doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that everyone's going to have an NDE. That wasn't it at all. It was that um, everyone understands the game in their last lifetime. Like you actually have to understand the game to finish it. I was also told that my life, like the path of my life, would be similar to Jesus's, and I needed to have that explained to me like over and over and over, and I still forgot what was meant by that, because I was so afraid of saying that to people. Um, I got interested in numerology and come to find out my life path is number is 33. And it's just funny how we have these, well, it's conditioning, these beliefs that we hold about ourselves, and they're so like steadfast. Like it's when you believe something fully, it's hard to let go of those ingrained beliefs. So I needed all of these things, like um, 33, the number three, like just pops up everywhere. Not so much now, but at that point, I needed a lot of like convincing that, all of this is real. It's all happening. I mean, it's as real as a dream can be.
So do you think everybody that's woken up it's their last lifetime, or are there some that would still want to come back?
The way I look at things is if we're here, we haven't completely woken up. We're awakening. Um, I think like that. When I say this, because I haven't reached a stage of like enlightenment, I can give you what my perception is. When I graduate to knowledge, knowledge is total, and I won't have to preface anything with this is just my perception. But what I believe is that anyone can choose for it to be their last lifetime. But if you're saying, I never want to come back here, it is not your last lifetime. Because, but the thing is, I didn't talk much about the first few years. They were really, really hard. Like I, many, many times did not want to be here. I resented the fact that I came back. My parents didn't want to hear about the experience. Like there were different people who thought I was crazy. Um, and it was really difficult to fight myself. And it seemed like every time I would reach the top of like a mountain and I would, you know, understand something, I'd get to this point where I could see there was an entire new mountain range after that, and it just felt like I was constantly surrendering and surrendering more and surrendering more. And now though, uh, A Course in Miracles has the version that I read has a manual for teachers in it, and it talks about the stages that you go through in when you're awakening and going through this process. And I found that it was really, really accurate. That like it talks about a period of undoing, and uh, like that's basically where you kind of learn to trust. Like I took 3.5 years off of working, and the last year I had run out of money, and I'd been in the condo that I own for like 11 years. And I say I own it. I own the mortgage. And I couldn't pay it. And I couldn't pay the mortgage and I couldn't pay the condo fee. And twice the condo association put liens on my property. And I don't know how this happened because I was behind in my mortgage and getting like, the threats that foreclosure was going to start. And the bank actually paid the liens to the condo association. Um, so how that happened, you know, like I couldn't pay the mortgage and the bank is giving me more money. Like, how does that work? But it was just trusting. Like, and for the longest time, I knew that I had to see everything as perfect, even though I didn't feel like everything was perfect. After a certain amount of time doing that, I started to see that, oh, okay, well, that was meant to teach me this. This person was put in my life who drives me nuts because they're showing me that about myself. And now it's like, now I'm sitting back and relaxing in knowing that I have everything. Like when I read the course, I thought that was figurative when it says, you know, everything is within you. Like you have everything that's real, is eternal. And I didn't understand that actually, like, the material world is encompassed in that. It doesn't it doesn't interest me. Like, my wants are not of this world. But what's awesome about that is that because I don't care, I have no resistance. So, like, I can allow anything to come into my life because I know I have it. And I when you don't care about receiving something, you're not in a state of lack like that you would be if you felt like you wanted it and you were trying to manifest it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about the word manifest that it drives me nuts. Like, because people will use it and they only want to use it in the positive sense, like when they've gotten something that they want. Oh, I manifested that. And it's like, well, you manifest everything, you just don't like what you're in alignment with, you know. Like, we're never out of alignment, you know. um but as I learned to uh shut the television off, and like, my diet has totally changed, all of these things just happened naturally, like, without my help. Like, if we can, the more we trust that everything is already done for us, and just allow our heart to be the guide, um, the better life gets. I think being someone with my personality makeup, it's been hard to, I don't want to say hard. Um, I'm very careful about the words that I choose to use because they're alive. And so sometimes I'll go to say something, be like, nope, that's not what I want to say, and cut it off. But um, uh, and now I've totally lost what that thought was. So I guess I didn't need to say it. uh, yeah, it's gone.
Well, he was talking about surrender and just allowing, getting out of our own way. I think I'm also at a stage in my life where I realize that everything is happening for us, not to us.
Hmm. That's huge. Everything can
And like you
change.
say, if you just give it time, at the moment it feels like, oh, this, how could this bad thing be for me? But at the time, if you have that understanding that it is going, that you can't see the bigger picture right now, it will happen. And sometimes you see it the next day, and sometimes it's in a couple of months or whatever. But it always happens.
Mm,
And then you just stop fighting with it because you realize, hey, this thing didn't feel right for me at the time. Maybe I wasn't in the mood for it. I wasn't expecting it. That's why I was resisting it. But actually, it worked out in my favor every
mm,
single time.
hmm. You used a word that is so important. There's an old Chinese proverb. Uh, hopefully I'll get it right. Ram Dass used to use it, that the way is never difficult for those who have no preferences. Expectations are why we suffer. You know, like, when we can stop expecting things, Like you can't suffer. Like the only thing we can suffer is our thinking, like we'll have pain. Um, Sometimes it's not, not everyone has to have pain all the time, but now it's funny because I've gone through different things and I'm going through some big changes right now. And my body's been releasing different things and I don't even know if they're from this lifetime. But when I feel pain now, like if I get one day, a couple weeks ago, I got really bad nerve pain in my legs. And I used to live like that all the time. Now I can't tolerate even 5 minutes of it. But it doesn't get me upset. I think to myself, whoa, something is shifting. This is awesome. That's not how many people think about like sciatica, but I know now that it's a message and I don't fear change anymore. If someone suggested, just even made a slight suggestion of change, my instant thought that was subconscious for most of my life would be, oh, how painful is it going to be? Like that was the energy I was putting into my future. How painful is it going to be? You know? Now it's like, I mean, I've seen what's going to happen. I don't know exactly how, the changes will happen in my life, but I don't have to be concerned with them. Like the longer I go, I just, I feel like I know where my life is heading, and I'm only at the beginning of it. And if I'm this joyful now, like I just can't even imagine, you know? Um like my goal, if I had a goal for being on this planet, is I would love to be someone who can lift others up just by being in their presence. Like uh, there's been people who have walked the earth who, could heal people by touching them. And I don't get caught up in the healing thing. I've been told that I'll be able to do that, but to me, we're here to heal ourselves, and the only one who can heal me is me. But the idea of bringing someone comfort and joy just by being in their presence or connecting with them somehow, to me, like, is the greatest thing I could ever like achieve. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you were saying all thoughts is what creates suffering, but there's the paradox in that as well, because that's the only thing we really can control.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's it's such a vicious cycle we can get trapped in. I had to learn that we have four main parts of our being, like our spiritual center, which vibrates at the level of God, and we all vibrate at 100% there. But beneath that is physical, emotional, and intellectual. And so I say it in that order because it's our thoughts that create the emotions, that create the physical feelings in our bodies. And it's the feeling that attracts new thoughts. So if I'm in a low vibration, I literally do not have access to thoughts that I would have if my vibration is higher. So when you're in a state of lack and of want, you literally keep yourself there. Like I've gone through this different, all of these phases of understanding. And at one point, I thought to myself, Like I've known that I could manifest anything that I wanted to. Like I could manifest money, and people have a problem with that. I don't know why. Like oh well, you can't manifest money. Like I know you can. And at one point, I thought to myself, well, the only reason I would want to manifest money would be to give it away, to give it to people. But then I realized, like, well, wait a minute. If I gave people money, like that wouldn't actually help them. Like, because it doesn't change really anything. Everyone, the best gift I can give someone else is to see them in their unlimited power. And then I give them a gift that they can literally like download. And, if they're open to it, you know, each of us is an unlimited creator. We just don't know it or remember it.
Yeah. And also, I love the fact that you said that we're here to play different roles, and it doesn't matter what role you're in, whether you're a homeless drunk or whether you're a king living on an island somewhere, it doesn't matter. Everything is about the experience. It's like you say, do you want to be the shoe in Monopoly or do you want to be the hat?
Yes, oh my God, that's perfect. Yes, that's exactly like I had to understand
Yes.
that when my consciousness left this universe, the universe disappeared. Like it was gone. It didn't exist. It literally is all a game. And we're so far removed from remembering what unconditional love is that it took me years to understand what it was. Like we think because like we have children that we understand what unconditional love is, but no one would ask if Hitler goes to hell if they understood. I mean, if Hitler can go to heaven, if they understood what unconditional love is. Like, there are no exceptions.
Yeah.
And like when we carry resentments over like past hurts or being wronged, it's not to say that like when someone does something like egregious, that that's okay. But, we wouldn't we wouldn't go persecute someone for what they've done in a dream, like we just wouldn't. It's just a dream, you know? Another way of looking at it that humans don't understand is that justice is taken care of by the universe. Like, there are no private thoughts. Like, we think we can hide things, but when we carry the vibration of a lie, it's in us. You can't like dispose of it, Um, I think there was one day that I was speaking with my friend who is the channeler, and at one point, like she's channeled all different kinds of beings and angels, and once or twice, like it's come through that it was God speaking, and at this point or at this day, I can't remember. It was some angelic collective. They don't give names unless you ask because they don't. It's human, to want names. But I'll never forget being told I had said something to my friend, and what the angel said was that what you said to her was so loving that it went straight to the heart of God, and God could see you. And I felt my heart open up a little bit wider, and I thought, oh, it's so wonderful to be seen, because for so long I was carrying all this garbage that I thought I needed to hide. And what that meant to me was I was free of it. Like we can't hide anything from ourselves. And that's what we're doing when we think that something we've done, like God hasn't seen, you know? Like, but that's like if you look at I don't know where it says in the Bible, like probably in the beginning, um, like the Genesis story where, or Adam and Eve, where it's said that God didn't know where Adam and Eve were after like they had eaten the apple, like they were hiding from God. And it's like, you can't hide from God, like that's not possible. Um, but when I was talking to God, it felt like having a conversation with myself, you know? It was so incredibly just comfortable and comforting. Um, when I first got back, I really like I wanted to I volunteered at a nursing home for a little while, and it was like I just needed to tell people there's nothing to be afraid of, Like I think like if people understood uh what is on the other side, like no one would stay, you know.
Yeah, the train would be full going one way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
And the
true.
irony is there's so many souls wanting to incarnate at this time.
No, well, that's a perfect example of how of our human ignorance. Like we think like overcrowding, like the planet being overpopulated is something that like we can control, like it's that all these souls want to be here now for what's happening, you know.
Well, this topic is fascinating. I could talk about it for hours.
I could
But
too.
no, that was just amazing. Well, Laura, if somebody wanted to connect with you, how would they get hold of you?
The best place right now is Facebook. If you send a message like through private or direct messaging, whatever it is, I'm pretty easy to find. So that would be the best way.
All right, well, I'll post that in the description below. And
Right.
then just before we go, do you have a message for our viewers?
A message for your viewers. Yes. I guess it would just be that if you don't like the way your life is going, you have control over everything. The main thing that is like determines your life is your perception. So you have to start looking at things in a different way. Gratitude is the key to that. Look at what you have. Stop looking at what you don't have. Stop looking at everyone else, and and what you wish could have been, and love your journey because it's perfect only for you. Someone else's journey isn't. So when you love the way that your life is, even if it's not the way your ego says is perfect, you can't understand anything you're experiencing in the moment you're experiencing it. So like this life can be if someone who had 3 mental illnesses, 16 back surgeries, and a life that she was completely willing to give up. And someone like that can say, I am so grateful that I'm here. I'm so grateful that I get to have this experience. If I can say that, then a lot of people can do the same thing, you know.
And thank you for sharing that because I think people always say, "Oh, it's easy for you to say. You don't know my situation." But here you are speaking, and you didn't have it easy. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I would say if you're going to choose to be the shoe, be the best shoe you can be.
Perfect. Yes.
And you can be upset that you chose to be a shoe, or you could say, well, how can this be a better shoe?
Or you could understand that you don't know that the shoe is perfect. I say this all the time, that coming here to this planet, it's like we're given a tennis racket and told to play hockey with it. And it never works. Like everyone else is hitting the puck like further and just having a much easier time, and you just don't like your tennis racket because it doesn't work and you can't do anything right. Well, one day you're introduced to tennis and you realize, oh, well, this is what this is for. Like, this is why, I mean, that's not a great example, but
No,
like we
I
don't,
love that. That makes so much sense.
well, we don't know what anything is for. And at
Yeah.
some point, and each of us can decide that points today. Like we decide when we want to take ourselves down from the cross, you know. We can actually, we're the only one like who can decide how long we want to carry the cross on our back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the truth. And it's interesting because it's in every single facet of our lives. You think you do it once, but it's not once, it's all the time. Every time you
Yeah.
have a negative thought or you start beating yourself up on this area of your life or that little area, you realize, no, it applies to everything.
Well, we're not taught that our brain is not anything different than a movie projector. So, like, we're projecting the same thing onto everything, you know?
Yep.
Like, that's why the saying "know thyself" has stuck around for centuries, because of how valuable it is. Like, when you know yourself, you see yourself in everyone because all you can see is yourself. It's like wearing rose-colored lenses. Everything you see can only be pink, like the problem is the seer, you
I
know.
must tell you a story. I come from South Africa, and when I lived there, I have a very short patience in traffic. I'll tend, if somebody's taking long, I tend to just, I'm out of the way, let me just go. And now I've moved to the Netherlands, which is my heritage, and they're all like that. And I thought that was just a me thing, but I get annoyed because I thought, oh, now all those years of me doing that is being, they're getting back at me now because I'm getting payback.
Well, it's funny. People bring up like, and it comes up with A Course in Miracles all the time. Like, I can change so many different things, but it's in the car, in traffic, and people will do things in cars that they like. Someone who would hold the door open for you would cut you off and beep at you in Boston, but traffic has been an incredible gift to me, and it's because, like, I used to drive around feeling like I must have a sign on my car that says, please cut me off, because it happens so much. And what I realized is that I like I couldn't forgive people in traffic. I couldn't just let things go. It wasn't that long ago that I thought to myself, if that was my mother, I would stop. I would say, go ahead. Like, please, I'll wait for you. And so, like, that's how I see it now. And what's crazy is I have a different experience. Like, there's one place on my way into work, many, many days, where I have to use this rotary. And the rotary, this literally, this one, or roundabout, this one place has changed the way I drive, because I had never seen people do so many like just awful things there. When I changed the way I approached it, and I dealt with everyone like as if they were my family, all of a sudden my GPS showed me a way to go around this traffic circle that it was always there. And it's like a cheat, like I don't know how I didn't see it before, but it actually takes much, much less time and you don't wait in the traffic. It was like once I got the lesson that I was meant to learn from that traffic circle, like the problem is gone. And that is true with, it's like what you had said with one problem just being everywhere. The law of correspondence is true, as within so without, or as above so below. um it's true on every level. um the book, the Kabbalion, which is hermetic principles, the laws of the universe. When you really kind of understand those, and the very first one is that, I think it's the very first one, the universe is mental. Uh, I didn't get that a few years ago, but literally everything is thought. So if traffic is just a great example, because it's a place where none of us have patience, but as soon as you have the patience, the problem disappears.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Huh? I used to get pulled over by the traffic police all the time for years. They would see me coming. I also thought I have a billboard on my head. And the one day a cop pulled me over. He was opposite on the other side of the street. I crossed the road and he actually turned his car, went behind me, pulled me over to tell me my back brake light didn't work. And I was like,
Wow.
there is no way you could see my back brake light from there. But anyway, I realized there's something in my mind that's attracting this. And I decided from that day, I've been pulled over more than anybody else in my lifetime has ever been pulled over. No more. Enough. It's done. And from that time, no one's pulled me over, ever. The
Wow.
police will literally stand in the road, stop the car behind me, and tell me to go while the next car has to stop.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
Oh,
literally, and I realized it was just some memory I was holding on to of something that happened to my sister that I'd
mhm.
taken on. It wasn't even my thing.
Wow. That's such a good example though of how like our fears create, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And I thought, wow, because that's energy. It's not about avoiding eye contact or hiding behind your steering wheel or making sure everything's paid up and everything's working. No,
Yeah.
no, there's something else at play. But yeah, anyway,
Well,
like I said, I could talk for hours,
yeah,
but
oh yeah, no, me too. I could and I have.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Laura. It was great meeting you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Just something amazing, and people can learn from it. And like you say, not be afraid of death. Be
Yeah,
open. Be willing to live their life, their best life.
right.
And yeah, and just being vulnerable and honest, like you say, everything is seen already. The universe has already seen everything you've done, and so what? Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's true. I think like there's so many different parts to my story that I think different people connect with, but one is with addiction and not being anonymous. Like all illness is mental illness. We just don't know that. We think physical illness is real and mental illness is, not somehow. And it's like the word for illness is dis-ease. So there's nothing that we need to hide anymore. There's a line of the course, and I'll end with this. There's a line in the course that says, I can only paraphrase it right now, but um, that what's within you when it's brought forth will save you, but if it's kept inside, it will kill you. So like when you bring what you're holding within forward, that's what literally opens up heaven. And part of the reason why I came back was I was shown I would learn how to live heaven on earth, and I'd be able to show others. And I mean, now there's so many people who are here doing the same thing. Like heaven is here. So is
Yeah.
hell. We just get to choose which we want.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Well, I love that. Thank you very much. And I think if people haven't got it now, they should go and get the Course in Miracles.
Absolutely.
Go start working through it. If they feel a calling for it, they do.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it can take time. It takes,
yeah.
if someone could understand in the very beginning that it's just a shift of perception, it's actually very simple and very easy.
Yeah.
The problem is our thinking. And you have to just see the world as a place for learning contrast. So we come here for the suffering. And when you understand that's what the world is for, then, oh, it's perfect. Like it's doing its job perfectly. And once you can see that, you've learned the lesson, you know?
Yeah. 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 And it's back to expectation. If you're expecting everything to be great and having a great life, comparing yourself to others who seem to have a better life, having
Right.
their own journey,
Oh, but
you're, yeah.
this is something that's explained in the course, is that we have these perceptions of what we lack, and we project our lack like outward, and so we think that, oh well, that person has what I want, that person has what I want, and it's all an illusion. you know we have
Yeah.
to learn to love what is for us. Like, that's something that's taken me a while. Like, looking at, like, my friend the channel is a perfect example. I felt like in the beginning, oh, I wish I had that. Like, that's so awesome, but there's benefits and drawbacks. It's not perfect for me. The way that everything unfolds for me is perfect. I wouldn't change anything that's happened in my life. Like, it's in the past now, when the past doesn't exist. So there's only right now, and right now is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I heard Bashar say that the other day. He said, you can have everything, but you don't want everything. You only want everything that is right for you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's true.
Yeah. All right. Let's leave it at that. Thank you again.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
like I
having
said,
me.
we could talk about it for hours, but yeah, I'll catch
Yes.
up with you on Facebook as well.
Okay, excellent.